In a diagram, we have the figure 1, which represents the firm or an individual farmer. And as we know, if we talk about an individual farmer or a firm, he will pay rent, okay? He will pay the amount of rent which will always be equal to the marginal revenue productivity of land. And this will always keep on falling as more and more land is being brought under the plow. And further, if we talk about the demand curve of a particular firm, is that it will always slopes downward, which means lower the amount of rent, more land will be demanded. So again, if you look at the supply side, recalling at the supply side for the case of a particular farmer, the supply of land from the point of view of a particular firm or a particular farmer, its supply is said to be perfectly elastic. That means the supply curve will always be parallel, okay, towards the OX axis. Here the OX axis representing the output, okay, the OY axis representing the amount of rent that is being paid. Yes, we have the downward sloping demand curve. We always have this line, that is, which is a supply curve of a particular firm. It is like what has been stated, it is parallel towards the OX axis. And as we know, initially what happened was we have the demand curve for a firm, which is the D curve, which is a downward sloping curve, and this curve as a supply curve. The demand curve and supply curve did intersect at point E, which gave us the OQ as the level of output and OR as the amount of rent. So let us suppose if the demand keep on increases, if the demand for land by a firm or a farmer did increases, what happened was we will have a new demand curve by the name of D dash. That means the demand curve will take a new shape, a new form in the name of D dash. And as such, what happened was the new demand curve did intersect the supply curve at the point E dash, okay, and did give us the OQ1 level of output. What we can state here is that for a firm, even though if demand keep on increases, yes, the quantity the quantity of land being used will also increase from OQ to OQ1, but the amount of rent being paid will never change, but instead will remain the same at OR rate. Further, if you look at the figure 2 over here, the figure 2 represents the case of an industry. And yes, uh, the demand curve of an industry also is a downward sloping curve, okay, and but the supply curve, unlike the supply curve of a firm, the supply curve of an industry, it is an upward sloping curve. So yes, taking the SS as the supply curve and the D over here as the original demand curve, what we can say is that this supply curve that intersects the demand curve at the point E and give us OQ as the quantity supplied and OR as the amount of rent. So let us suppose the amount of rent increases, okay? If the amount of rent increases from OR to OR1, what happened was the demand curve will shift upwards, will take a new shape in the name of D2. And again, the new demand curve will intersect the original supply curve at E dash, okay, giving us OR as OR1 as the amount of rent that is being paid. And yes, the quantity of land that is being used increases from OQ to OQ1. And yes, if the demand keep on increases, what we can see here just by looking at the diagram, the demand, if it did keep on increases, the demand curve will further shift upwards. Okay, shift upwards, take a new name by the name of D2. And again, this new demand curve will intersect the supply curve at a new equilibrium point, that is at E2, which give us OR2 as the amount of rent that is being paid, and OQ2 as the quantity of land that is being used. So from the side of an industry having an upward sloping curve, having a downward sloping demand curve, what we can see is that if the rent keep on increases, okay, more and more land will be withdrawn from other uses and put to this very use. And as such, we do have the shape, this shape, that is, this is a supply curve and a downward sloping demand curve. This figure, that is the figure 2, it depicts the case of an industry. Opposite will be the case if there is a fall in demand. If we take this D2 as the original demand curve, suppose there is a fall or there is a decline in a demand for land. And as such, with the fall or with the decline in the demand for land, what will happen is that the demand curve will also shift, and not only that, the amount of rent that is being paid will also fall. And if it did falls further, let's say to D, what happened was, yes, the demand curve, yes, it will shift. And at the same time, not only the demand curve will shift, but also the rate of rent that is being paid will also decline from R1 to OR. Okay, so this picture, it shows the situation of a particular industry. Further, figure 3 depicts the case of an economy or the country. And under the figure 3, here we have ES as the supply curve, which is we have ES as a supply curve, which is parallel towards the OY axis. We have the demand curves, which are downward sloping in nature. And looking at this very particular diagram, what we can see is that till OE, okay, that means OE is the amount of land that is available in a particular country or in a particular economy. Suppose demand that increases from, say, from OA, okay, suppose initially the demand is OA. Till this much demand, there is no rent, okay, because there's still enough land that can be used, okay. But what happened was, if demand keep on increases, say from OA to OE, still there is no rent, okay, because like what I've been telling you, the OE is the total amount of land that is available for the entire country. But suppose what happened was, if demand keep on increases from OA, from OE further, okay, we have a new demand curve by the name of D2, D3, okay. So if demand keep on increases further to D2 and D3, what happened was, rent will come into the picture. Now we have the D2 did intersect the supply curve at E2, okay, giving us or determine OR2 as the amount of rent. And if the demand keep on increases to D3, okay, increases further, we will have the new demand curve by the name of D3, which will determine the amount of rent which will increase to OR3 at point E3. Okay, so what happened was, yes, because the supply of land can't be increased, okay, if demand keep on increases, okay, that means that plot of land will receive something as rent, okay, and as such what has been termed as the modern economists as the scarcity rent. This rent that is being obtained, that is being received by the plot of land that is OR2 or OR3 is referred to as a scarcity rent. Why? Is because due to the one main reason that the supply of land is scarce compared to its demand. Okay, so this is how the modern economists try to explain the emergence of rent from the point of view of a firm, from the point of view of industry, and from the point of view of an economy. So we'll stop here for today, okay?